Good morning, and welcome to Interfaith Community Sanctuary, to all of you present here, and to all of you present in the technical world. Today is the first Sunday, and that is the Sunday for welcoming guests, and we have three people, two of whom we know. I'm speaking personally. We'll have Jo Gilbert de Vargas and Michael Douglas and Tim Kinsella as our guests today. So thank you for coming in whatever form, and welcome.
And hello again. I'm honored and proud, and thank you, Michael, and Karen, and Jo, and good to see you again, Timothy. I'm here to welcome in our ancestors, and one thing I like to use as some source material is this day in history, and today, July 2nd, in 1968, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Civil Rights Act. And while that was a wonderful achievement and a great milestone in history, people are still struggling with their rights and access to those rights today. So I thought it good to use a prayer from one of those ancestors, one of my spiritual, if I may call him a brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Maybe not a brother in blood, but in spirit. And I hope that you all find some comfort in this, and to welcome our ancestors. O God, we thank you for the fact that you have inspired men and women in all nations and in all cultures. We call you different names. Some call you Allah, some call you Elohim, some call you Jehovah, some call you Brahma, some call you the unmoved mover. But we know that these are all names for one and the same God. Grant that we will follow you and become so committed to your way and your kingdom that we will be able to establish in our lives and in this world a brother and a sisterhood, and that we will be able to establish here a kingdom of understanding, where men and women will live together as brothers and sisters and respect the dignity and worth of every human being. In the name and spirit of Jesus, amen. I would also like to honor our native peoples. And on this land, many, many generations of native peoples have trod and sacrificed and sustained this land and helped to prepare it for us today and continue to live and work among us. And one of those native peoples, the Duwamish, somehow in the infinite wisdom of our government, US government, are not recognized as a tribe, no matter how we as a city and a community may acknowledge them with the river, renaming our streets in the Lushootseed Way. They are not acknowledged as one of the Coast Salish tribe. If you do wish to hear more about them, you can look at realrentduwamish.org. And I'd like to do, as I often do here, take a prayer from our good friend and sister Siswinkle Laura Boucher. Some time ago, she told us if we place our hand on our heart, and you can do this at home if you'd like to, place your hand on your heart, and when I do that, I think of gathering all that is human about me, taking it together, and then I will raise it up to the heavens and offer it to the Creator. As I do that, we say the prayer together, Aho, and when the Creator hopefully takes my offering, he may or she may give me a gift or give us a gift to carry on with us. So, deep breath together. Oh, blessed be. Thank you.
Another part of our creating sacred space together is to honor the divine feminine. And we are learning a lot about the balance of the masculine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and working to live that ourselves. So this morning I have for us a prayer to the supernal parents. All-powerful Lord, our Father, all-wise Lady, our Mother, supernal parents of all that was and is to come, sustain us, your children, this day. Give us the wisdom to see your path and the strength to prevail in the darkest hour. We thank you for the joys we have and for your grace bestowed upon us this day and every day. May we thrive and grow in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, now and forevermore. Amen.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? The whole, it's like I got up here and like adjust my tie for 5 minutes or something. It's just, but because it's a machine, we think it's okay. Okay, welcome. Welcome, everybody, including you two. Today is our guest Sunday, honoring the guest. We have more and more in the last few years used our congregation as a resource for this guest Sunday. Partly, I think, because at some point we realized how much wisdom there was in our congregation that we were not using as a resource, So it's in a sense, the whole foundation of our interfaith practice is conversation, is getting together and sharing things that are important to us, whether it's talk or spiritual practice or food or music. It's getting together and sharing things, and it's been really I think it's been a really good practice to dive deep into the communal wisdom of our community, as well as we clearly haven't given up inviting people in from the margins of our experience. We're always trying to widen our perspective. Anyway, here we are, hosting ourselves. I'd like to contextualize what we're doing today and put it kind of in the stream of what we've been doing all year. Our theme today is learning through the body, listening through the body. And you know, we often think of learning as a mental or intellectual experience. And there's lots of other ways that learning happens. And we are at a stage in the year, you know, we've mapped out the year as sort of a map of the spiritual path. So we started with the fundamentals of the spiritual path. And when we say the spiritual path, we're really kind of positing a, you know, an map, you know, some archetypal map of the spiritual journey, which is a very arrogant thing to do in some sense. But it's also the way humans think. You know, you try and get general patterns and kind of judge by that. So we've really tried to look using, you know, all the traditional and contemporary sources at our disposal to try and really clearly see what's a general map of human transformation. And we've tried to really engage with what are the practices and obstacles that belong to this phase of the path. And I think that's really one of the lessons of this year, is that different practices and different viewpoints even are appropriate at different stages of our individual development. There's not a one-size-fits-all spiritual prescription for everybody. You know, it's even things that seem, you know, like they might be universal goods, like, you know, stretching your body or meditation, or there's always a circumstance where that's not what you ought to be doing. So all spiritual practices are phase appropriate, and we need the discernment to know what's appropriate for us, you know, not for other people, for us, and that's part of what we're working with this year. We're talking about transformation through the body, the heart, and the soul. Mind, body, heart, and mind. And it's phase appropriate to treat all of these separately in a way at some point. We don't want to get stuck there. We don't want to get stuck thinking of the body, the heart, and the mind as separate things. Because at a certain point in our spiritual development, that's really represented by, in the way we've mapped out the year, by now. You know, this is the middle of the year, what we're calling the third phase of spiritual development, which is really the phase of fruiting. You know, it's like we started with a phase of, like, you know, kind of the basics, being a good person, the moral thing, reorienting your life, and then there's kind of a almost technical phase where you're like devoted to, you know, you've integrated spiritual practices or whatever, you know, however you want to think about that, into your life, and you're working with it. You know, you're striving, you're trying to do things right. There's a point where in a sense, that work pays off, just like taking care of a fruit tree. Eventually you get fruit if you do it right, and if all the, you know, if the weather cooperates. And that is not the time for striving. You know, so after, in a sense, after learning for so long to, you know, keep things crisp and work on stuff, we have to give up. You know, there's places where we just have to relax. That's what's appropriate then. You know, when you reach the top of a hill, you don't keep going. You know, you stop and start really appreciating letting gravity work for you instead of working against it all the time. So that's why the general theme for this month is relaxing the body. Now, what does relaxing the body have to do with learning? Because this is not a connection we normally make in this culture. And before, I'm going to kick this over to you pretty quickly, just so you know. Learning, especially, learning is about listening. It's not just about, and it's not just about listening in a sense of somebody standing at the head of the class, kind of like I am right now if I had a chalkboard, you know, and you know, assimilating facts. Listening is also with the body, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking about, is listening with your body. And you simply can't do it if you're not relaxed. You know, if your body is if your body is tense, if you're contracted, if you're you know, do you know how people, if you think about somebody listening really hard, you know, you kind of get an image of like, you know, like listening really hard, you know. But what we need to do is listen really soft. You know, we need to relax our muscles and really take things in. And we know this if, like, every time we interact with another human being, you know, if there's tension in your body, you know, you're really not letting that the presence of that other human being in. You know, you're putting up a wall. And if you just relax and be centered in your body and be open to the other person, you can hear them and you can understand them. And it's so I'm just saying the body is the body and relaxing the body is very important for gathering knowledge and for learning how to do and how to be the way we want to do and to be in the world. It also points up that as we go further in the spiritual path, everything is connected to everything. You know, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, we cannot experience any of them separately, because if there's movement in one, you feel it everywhere else. And the great joy and benefit of this is that our body then becomes an organ of perception. Our entire body becomes an organ of perception on all levels. You know, you can if you're really just open, it doesn't take any great skill. If you're just open, you can experience everything that's going on in another human being. You know, we spend half our time trying not to do this. Just, you know, so we can sort of have our own trip going on. But, okay, that's enough. So I'm going to introduce our guest. Can you introduce me? We'll just go around.
Can I introduce you?
Yeah. Quick.
This is my dear brother Michael Douglas, of whom there is only one in this universe. And I treasure that uniqueness and his ability to engage with a wide range of experience and perspectives and strive to continuously integrate that into his ever-expanding cosmic worldview.
Yeah, I want to be that guy. This is Sally Jo Gilbert de Vargas, who I would say needs no introduction, but then I wouldn't be talking. who is, as anyone who has spent any time in our community knows, is like one of the legs of the cow, Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't there, the cow would be like, falling over. I'll take that as anxious. Yeah. And well, that's enough. You can introduce Timothy.
Okay, I'll introduce Timothy Kinsella, who's also a very valuable member of our community and many other Sufi communities, particularly the Mevlevi Order of America. A master musician, a master musicologist, historian, scholar, but I want to emphasize musician because I know many of us have experienced him through his music making, and I'm thrilled that he's going to be talking to us about that in particular today. And we welcome him and his deep understanding of Sufism and music as it relates to the spiritual path. So thank you for being here, Timothy.
And you.
So, hi everybody. Whoops. Oh, I think I'll hold it because until I have to not hold it. So yeah, thank you, Michael. That was a beautiful introduction to our theme and to what we're working with our spiritual discernment this year. And right now in the year, we're at a very important point in the year, as Michael pointed out, a halfway point. And I love the idea of the concept of relaxing in order to listen and hear. I was thinking about anticipating what Timothy will be talking to us about, how as a musician, I know myself that when I am engaged in music, whether I'm playing, accompanying with myself, with others, or just strictly listening to music, I learn most I basically learn everything through listening, through my faculty of hearing. And that isn't true of everything I learn in life, I think, but it's definitely true of music, and it's definitely true in a lot of aspects of learning, that listening is an important part of it. But I like that concept of relaxed listening because I know that especially, I don't know why I'm thinking of music, but especially in music, one hears better when one relaxes. And I think that what I'm going to be talking about is how the relaxation of the body can and does contribute to our spiritual experiences on all levels. And I think most of you know I was a classroom teacher for 40 years in public education, educating students all the way from students who are severely emotionally disturbed, kids with severe autism, kids with other kinds of disorder, what most of us call disorders or learning disabilities or learning disorders or learning differences, we like to think of them, but also kids who were also on the other end of the spectrum considered, gifted, talented, et cetera, and everything in between. So I was the kind of teacher that principals like to have me on their staff because I would teach anybody and everybody, and I loved teaching them all at the same time in the same classroom. I wasn't one who believed you had to separate kids out all the time in order to reach them. So that made for a very colored career, and I found that I used in my teaching basically language. I'm kind of a left brain person. I'm have particular strengths in reading and writing and talking and conversing and explaining and that kind of thing. And that, if you were probably to look at my brain, you'd probably see that side light up more than all the others. And that's okay, that's who I am, that's what I've developed into. But as I've gone further in the spiritual path, I've found that to be a little bit out of balance, actually a lot out of balance. And I have, throughout my life, toyed with that whole concept, but I've been pretty reluctant to go into other aspects of learning which have more to do with say, visual arts, the body, movement, and that kind of thing. So it's interesting that the last 3 or 4 years I've been more explicitly or specifically involved in practices such as yoga and qigong. And I've had several different qigong teachers, some fantastic qigong teachers, all of them from China, actually, it just so happens. And my current teacher named Master, affectionately call him Master Li, he's well into his 80s and he's been teaching forever. And he's been here in Seattle a number of times. One of our congregants brought him to Seattle many times for weekend retreats and longer, which I participated in. And ever since COVID, I've been participating with him online regularly, which has made it very nice too. And he practices something he calls the Qigong of unconditional love. And we call it meditation in movement and stillness. And I'd like to share with you a little about that. I've also been involved with a very wonderful yoga teacher here in Seattle who runs the Finney Ridge Yoga Studio, which is now changed. The last few months she's changed her location, but anyway, I've also been involved with her classes and retreats and so on. Right now her name is slipping my mind, but I'll come back to that in a second. But she's been a beautiful practitioner, and some of her students I've taken workshops with. So I've also gotten involved in the practice of yoga, which is also a different kind of yoga. It's not a big active hot yoga kind of thing where you do all kinds of tricky poses and things. It's more of a relaxation yoga, and actually I started it out as being yoga for what we call healing yoga, or I started out when I had a back injury and I needed healing energy, and so the yoga that she practices particularly is emphasizing the healing arts, and she's also an Ayurvedic doctor. So all these things have worked together to help me get more in touch with the body and how the relaxation of the body is so important in our spiritual practices and in our health and in our lives in general. So rather than talk too much about it, which is what I know I always do, I'd like to not so much talk about it, but if you feel comfortable, you can stay seated, but if you feel comfortable standing up, I'd like for everybody to stand up and just spread out a little bit so that your arms won't necessarily knock into anybody if you stretch them out. And I want to just demonstrate a few things that would illustrate what I'm learning. Standing. So if we all just kind of stand in a nice, comfortable, but tall position, as if someone is taking a string out of the top of your head and just pulling it up gently, so there's a little bit of a tug on your head, so you're tall and your neck is in line, your spine is in line. And I want you to just kind of shake a little, just jiggle a little bit. This is an initial form of relaxation, and Master Lee sometimes has us do this for 10 or 15 minutes, where we just shake all parts of our body. We're not going to do that for too long right now. But I want you to feel what it feels like. Shake the inside, shake around. It won't hurt your organs to shake them up a little bit. They like to wake up. And not too hard, but just your neck, roll it around a little bit. Shake your knees a little bit so they're relaxed. Don't keep your knees too locked. Feel your feet on the ground. You feel those little toes in there? Wiggle your toes a little bit. It's becoming conscious of our body. And this is a form of relaxation. Now, Master Lee says all of his practice is about relaxation. And he says there are so many levels of relaxation we can experience. You may think you're relaxed right now. Do an hour or two with Master Lee, and you'll find out you can get a lot more relaxed. But he doesn't talk to you about it, but he shows you. So we always start our practice by holding our hands up, cupping them in front of our mouth for a little, just in a little cup form like this. And we gently blow into them. This is a form of purification with our breath. Breath, this is important. Pay attention to your breath right now. You're going to gently breathe, kind of gently blow into your palms of your hand. Just one deep breath. Take it in. Feel it hitting your palms? That feels pretty good. Now take your left arm and go up, and take your right arm and go down, And your right arm is going to settle right below your navel, and just in a little cup there. And your left arm is going to go right up to your forehead. What we're doing here is we're connecting with heaven above us, or the sky, the heavens, and we're connecting with the earth below us. We're going to gently bring our left arm down very slowly as we're purifying our head, our face. We're going to pass by our heart. We're going to purify our heart with this good energy of our breath. And we're going to gently let our left hand cradle into our right hand. And we're sitting, our hands are sitting right there at what's called our dantian, which is the center of where we store our energy in our body, according to the Chinese system. And it's a very powerful place in our body. Now, as I'm going to talk now and then about the dantian. So that's what I mean by the dantian. It's about just like 2 fingers below your navel. And it's a very important part on the inside of your body, just about halfway between, right in the middle of your body. Now, at this point, I'd like you to relax your arms again at your side. And I want you to think about I'm going to talk less now, and I want you to keep your eyes on me if you can, and follow what I'm doing. I will say left and right, because I know when I go left, it looks like it's right to you, so that confuses. So you're going to look over to the left. Just glance, maybe I'm looking out a window with beautiful trees. Then you're going to gently lift your 2 arms up to about your chest height, also out to the left a little bit where you're looking. Yeah, so everybody's kind of pointing that way. And then you're very gently going to take your left arm down and your right arm up, and you're going to face the center, and you're going to start to gently move your trunk of your body slowly back and forth while the arms form a circle with your wrists very limp. Your arms are forming a circle in front of your body while your body itself is gently turning from left to right. Now I know it sounds complicated, so just look at me. I'm just gently moving back and forth and slowly with my body, with the trunk of my body. My arms are not moving side to side. My arms are making a circle in front of my body while my trunk moves side to side very slowly. Now we're moving very slowly, and what we're trying to feel is the energy. I don't know about you, but I can feel it right under my palms. There's it's a buildup of energy underneath my palms, and it's being directed into my body as my arms make this circle in front of me, like there's a big balloon in front of me, and I'm just bringing the energy. Now this is the qi. Qi means energy in Chinese, and it's all positive. It's universal. It's the universal energy. It could be called love, universal love, unconditional love. It's always available to us. You know where we're getting it from? We're getting it from those trees out there. We're getting it from the sunshine. We're getting it from the air. We're getting it from the clouds, from the grasses, from the animals, from the flowers. We're getting this energy from everything in the natural world. And it's coming into us because it's part of us. And it's enriching us. It's healing us. It's relaxing us. And it's all good. And it's free. And it's always there. And we can always bring it into ourselves. Now, if your arms are feeling tired, you can make the circle a little smaller or a little lower, but you shouldn't be striving with your arms. They should be very relaxing. Okay, now, I have to tell you a secret. I can do this for half an hour and never get tired, not because I'm strong, because I'm not strong. If you look at me, you can see I'm not strong right now. But the energy feeds itself and gives itself to me. Now let's let our arms gently fall down again to our sides. We're not going to do that for half an hour, though I'd like to. Once I get started, I never want to stop. Now another very relaxing movement that our body can experience is a rocking motion. Most of you know how we rock babies when they start to cry, or if you have a little dog or a cat or a pet, you might rock your pet to calm them down. Well, we like to be rocked too. Everybody likes to be rocked. Kind of a universal relaxation technique. And when we rock, we're gently shifting our weight from side to side. Our arms are just going where they go when our body goes. We're not doing it too big or too strong. We're not heaving or holding, but we're just sort of gently rocking back and forth. Maybe our head is going a little bit from side to side. We're staying centered and balanced so we don't fall over. You may lift your heel a little bit when you go to one side. But gently, if you have room here, let your arms go up a little higher if that's comfortable for you, if your shoulders are not painful. And let your arms go a little higher like you have a little ball that you're rocking with. And it's a very light ball, it's like a balloon. It doesn't weigh anything. But actually, there is a ball there. It's a ball of chi. And it's right between your hands. Can you feel it? I feel it. It's a little bit of resistance against your hands, against your palms of your hands, which is tingling a little bit. I don't know, for me it is. It may be for you too. I felt this, the first time I did it with Master Lee, I was quite amazed because I didn't really believe I was going to feel it, but I did. And what I find is it's relaxing me. And it's, at the same time it's relaxing me, it's energizing me with this really beautiful kind of loving energy. Keep your shoulders very relaxed. If you feel your shoulders hunching up, let them down. We can control the relaxation of our body. This is one of the main messages I want to get across here. And it's not my words that are controlling it. It's your actions of your body. Maybe put a little bounce in your knee, in your legs, so that you feel a little, almost like you're dancing with that balloon. This rocking motion can be done for a long time without harming you in any way. But what it's doing is bringing the chi into the sides of your body, which don't get much attention. The sides of your body are full of organs and blood and lymph and all kinds of important things that you need to be healthy and to relax. And so this chi is now coming into the sides of your body, and chi always goes where it's needed. And Master Lee says, don't think about chi or where it's going, because the mind can interfere with the chi, you know. The mind gets too bossy with the chi. The chi knows what to do, and he always tells us, quieten your mind, quiet your heart. Quiet your mind. Pay attention to your breath. Your breath is not your mind. Your breath is not your heart. Your breath is part of your body, and it's part of the chi. So if you want to pay attention to something, pay attention to your breath. Make your breathing slow, maybe a little deeper. Now gently you bring your arms a little closer to your body. And kind of the rocking motion begins to slow. And we're going to do one more movement, which is a gathering of chi. This is one of the first things we learned with the Master. And that's where you gently bend down and you scoop up the chi from the earth and you bring it up through your legs slowly, all the way back to that dantian. Remember where we stopped first? You scoop down, you bring it up to that dantian, and you hold it there a minute. That's a storehouse. Then you take your arms and you might, if you're comfortably looking up to the sky, certainly stretch up, but relax those shoulders. Don't make them too tense. Don't make them tense at all. And then actually you can feel the chi coming down upon you like little petals, flower petals, like in the spring, how those trees let those petals, those little pink petals fall. And they're falling, 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 falling. They're going into your body, through your body. This is the chi energy. And you're going to stop that energy at your heart and hold it there for a minute. Because the heart and the dantian are two more centers that are used to store and guide your chi. One more time, we're going to reach down to the earth and bring up. By the way, Mother Earth is giving us all through our feet, through our legs, through our hips and our thighs, right to our core, right there to our dantian. We can keep it there. That's a storehouse. That'll stay there as long as we want it and need it. Now we lift up to the heavens. There's so much chi in the heavens. It's everywhere. It's coming down, 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 down. With our intention, we can bring it all down like a little spring shower. Down, down, down. Right through our head. It goes right into our crown of our head. Down through our face, our jaws, our brain, into our neck. Down, down, down. Right into our heart. There it can also settle and be of great value to us. Unconditional love and relaxation. Total quieting of the mind. Now I'm very sorry I had to talk all that time, but hopefully you weren't really paying attention to my talking. You were paying attention to what was going on in your body. And I invite you to try that on your own without anybody talking to you. Thank you.
Now that I'm nice and relaxed, I'm not going to talk. that Qigong relaxing was wonderful for music. With my own practice, and if I have a student, I insist on no white knuckles. I mean, the optimum is to release as much tension as possible, and there's a lot of mental stuff that goes on when you're trying to play music, and that can easily translate into bodily tension, and you'll see people holding their instruments in a death grip when you should be holding your instrument as you would hold the body of a lover. So have to remember that constantly as we play. And maybe I would like to riff on a couple things my colleagues have brought up briefly. And the idea of listening deeply, is so important to musicking. And for me, it's how you can discern, essentially, a good musician over those who are not. And the mark of a good musician is that they are always listening when they're playing with other people. You're listening deeply to what's happening and responding to it and doing this beautiful ballet of adjustment, and it becomes exquisite, and you can get to some very intuitive things that way, whereas sometimes you encounter people playing music who are so intensely concerned with just playing something, and you can tell they're not listening to you. And in those conditions, music doesn't happen, doesn't appear. So making music in that way is very akin to making love. Another experience in which one optimally must be fully open and fully engaged and fully present and attuned to the needs and desire and energetic state of the partner. When all those things come together, it can be exquisite. Michael asked me to say something about the process of learning in this musical tradition of, here we go, hanging words on something, and it's important how you describe it. But Ottoman Turkish classical music that I've been engaged with for a better part of a decade and a half. And I've engaged many different traditions of music making throughout my life, and they all have their own particular learning modes and modalities. And this one draws upon a very old tradition and way of learning that is embodied in many ways, but it's called meshq, coming from an Arabic word, mashq, which most simply means imitation, but in the experience of meshk, in the Turkish classical experience of it, it connotes a sort of master-apprentice situation in which the student will study with a master teacher and strive to emulate everything that teacher plays and presents to the student. And I find that it's a very different experience of music learning and acquisition than we might typically experience in the West. I know there's many variations of that, but many times you just decide that you want to play music, a particular instrument or a singing or what have you, and you find a teacher and you make a commercial arrangement and you go for your lesson. And in some situations it's like when you go to your doctor, and unless you have a really fine doctor, the primary focus of our contemporary medical establishment seems to be making money. And so your doctor is trying to get you in and out the door as fast as they possibly can so they can get the next paying customer in. And there's not a lot of time for authentic, sincere, deep engagement with this person to whom you are entrusting your health. And so sometimes when we go for regular music lessons, it's just that, you go, you get your lesson, they're looking at the clock, you're looking at the clock, you experience something and you leave. And there are many degrees of relationship you can have with a music teacher. I'm not trying to paint it all with one brush, but in the Turkish tradition of meshk, the relationship with the teacher is of paramount, life-defining significance. And there's much in the music that, for example, we just played, which was a peshrev or prelude in Makam Sabah by Tanburi Azman Bey. For centuries, none of this music was ever written down, notated. It was all an oral transmission from master to student, and then at a certain point, the students would master the material and they would acquire their own students, and that's how the music was transmitted through the centuries. And so if you're in a lesson with your hoca, I'm going to use the Turkish word for teacher, you are fully present and you're listening to everything they say, everything they do, every little gesture, musical or otherwise. And so if I were learning this piece with one of my teachers, he would play it first, and I would listen, and then I would play it based solely on my oral experience of it, my memory. And I would play it back, and the teacher would listen and verbally or non-verbally correct and refine my understanding of the piece. And and we would work on small phrases, small chunks. We wouldn't, for example, he wouldn't play through 5 minutes of music and expect that I'm going to just be able to reproduce it. Although at one time that was more possible, as people's faculty for memory had not degraded into this fragmentary, short-term reality that we seem to have today, where instead of memorizing information and facts, we carry around our. Well, I don't need to memorize this because I got Google. Yeah, okay. But that's a fundamentally different experience, superficial. So in Meshk, you're learning orally with your teacher, and now I'm just focusing on the musical aspects of it. In this particular music tradition, the melodies are also working in close correlation with the rhythms, and the rhythm patterns are called usul, or usular, plural. And the way you learn those first is not by picking up a drum and playing, but you vocalize the sounds and you beat them on your thighs. So for example, a very simple but basic rhythm pattern called Sofyan, which means in the Sufi way, it's a duple 2-beat meter. But the vocables would be doom, tek, doom, tek, doom, tek, doom, tek. And the syllables actually sound like the sounds on the drum. So doom is your powerful, strong beat, or your downbeat. So if your teacher were trying to convey that to you, you would be sitting there, doom, tek, 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 doom, tek. And you would literally be beating that rhythm into your bodily awareness, which is a whole different thing than, for example, looking at a piece of Western notation and going, oh, 1 and 2 and 3 E and a 4 and da 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 da. I mean, it kind of works, but this is really, an embodied practice. And likewise for the melody, the melodic structure of Turkish classical music is governed by a system called makam, and basically they're a system of melodic modes that have certain pitches and behave in certain ways, and I could talk for 2 hours about that, but you have to learn and acquire these slowly, and you also do that orally. So your teacher in the system of Meshk will demonstrate those to you by singing them and having you sing them. They use a certain solfege, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do system that's attuned to this Turkish music. So, for example, Makam Sabah, my teacher might look at me and go, sol, la, la, si, do, si, la, sol, la. And then I would sing it back. La, si, do, re, do, si, la, sol, la, do. Re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, la. And likewise, the voice is physical. Certain people who like to sing sometimes forget that the voice is it's a physical, it's a muscular thing, process, and it's another one of those physical activities that is use it or lose it. So if you like to sing and you want to keep your voice up, you got to sing every day. And all of us, well, many of us drive cars. You got your own personal little singing studio. You got to keep that up. You can't, sing every 2 weeks or something and expect that your voice is still going to be there. I mean, like, you wouldn't run a marathon if you hadn't jogged in 6 months. So the music is transmitted via this process of deep listening and imitation and interaction with the teacher who corrects you. And traditionally, there was no hurry, there was no rush in this system. If you learned one line of music in your lesson 1 week, that's fine, because next week, or more typically the next day or the next couple days, you go back and learn a little more. And the master musicians in this tradition committed all of this music to memory, prodigious feats of memory, like memorizing Quran. Or in a Mevlevi Teke, there was a person known as Mevlevihan, whose job it was to fully understand the verses of Rumi and be able to expound upon them. And quite often this person was also a hafiz, which meant that he had memorized the entire Quran, several books of hadith, and some of these people had memorized all of the spiritual couplets of Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. And there are very, very many of them. So, prodigious memory.
Can I ask you a question? So, it seems to you one of the you're talking in a very musical vein, which is appropriate. But one of the things that I understand about Meshk and this whole kind of teaching modality is that you aren't just imitating the musical practice. You're basically living in a kind of intimate association with the teacher and absorbing everything about their life. There's not a real distinction like this is the musician and this is the person. You're basically trying to imbibe and imitate like the whole package. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I was getting there.
All right.
Because that is very crucial aspects of the Meshk experience, in distinction to the more typical Western practice that I adumbrated earlier, where you just go for your lesson, you pay your money, and you leave. In the Meshk system, should you be so fortunate to be accepted by a master teacher, which is not a given, you can't just offer to pay anybody just because you want to study with them. You need to convince them somehow that it's an appropriate relationship, and that's another whole process. But once you have found a teacher, and this is speaking more traditionally because the changes of the last 100 years have had a huge effect on all societies throughout the world, and changed, destroyed, warped, transformed a lot of these traditional processes. But yeah, you would typically visit the teacher at their home, and the teacher at some point would begin to consider you as a member of their own family. And in some cases, this master teacher or teacher-student relationship, Hoja Talib, meaning student, would be one of the most important relationships, if not the most important relationship in your life. And the teacher was not only transmitting the music and musical abilities, but also essentially conveying the ethics of the entire context of this music and showing you not only how to behave as a musician, but how to behave as a human being through the refinement of these this musical culture. And you would be watching your teacher to see how they did everything. How do they make tea? How do they set the table? How do they make the bed? You know, like every little detail. And there would be a lesson therein. And very often when you started with a teacher, they wouldn't teach music right away. I mean, you wouldn't walk in there, it was like, oh, I'm a paying customer and I want to learn this piece right now. You know, like, so you might go over to the teacher's house and you'd wash their car with them and watch how they did it and try to do it the same way, or play ping pong, or Niazi Sayan, who is a very important Nezen and part of the lineage to which I am attached, greatest Nezen according to many of the 20th century. He's still alive, he's like 96, 97. You'd go over to his house and work in the dark room or play ping pong. And maybe only gradually would music, after you had been properly conditioned and opened and receptive, would the music begin to filter in. Not that there's a clear distinction between something called music and something that isn't. One of my own teachers, Timothy Cevikola, he makes the most perfect and awesome Turkish tea you would ever experience. And at the end of a day of study and playing with him, sometimes, if you're fortunate enough, he will make tea, Turkish tea. I don't know if y'all have tried it, but it's very strong, black, dark, reddish tea almost. And there's a whole process to brewing it. And we would just sit and watch our Hoja brew the tea. And as the tea was brewing, and it takes a long time to do it properly, he would begin to tell stories, sohbet, and you'd get some of the best stories out of him while you're waiting to drink this tea, which is going to now keep you up for the rest of the night. That's another part of the Mesh tradition, is the stories, that the things your teacher says, not necessarily just musical details, but they will tell you about their teachers, the lives of their teachers, the history, the context in which this music is ingrained and embodied. And the stories are as much a part of this tradition as anything else. So yeah, it's a more complete package, and you remain typically with your Hoja. It's a lifelong relationship, even if you should become a fabulous musician or Nezen or whatever your instrument is, you would still visit your Hoja. And once you did, you would still be in the role of student, of talib, no matter, how far you had gotten. And okay, modernity and post-modernity have had their effect on this traditional system of meshk, and it was very forcefully interrupted and intervened with during the early 20th century, at the time that the modern Turkish state came into being. And as part of that huge sweeping reform of the society, many of the traditional structures were dismantled or prohibited, banned, including Sufi activity. All the Sufi lodges were shut down. And the Sufi lodges had been one of the main sites in which this meshk process was occurring. So it was a very tenuous situation for a long time. Fortunately for music, it was still the kind of thing that could be kept alive if surreptitiously. You could still learn the music with a teacher, although there was no vector for performing it in the sense of a Sufi ceremony like the Sama of the whirling dervishes. So that was kept alive. Okay, I remember where I was going with this. So even in Turkey today, the meshk system, which I'm just sketching the barest outlines of here, does not exist as it did 100, 200, 300 years ago. And people are working with modern manifestations of that. If you're a Turkish person and you want to learn this music, you might go to a conservatory that's operating along Western lines, and you might learn theory and such, but even then you're still expected to find a master after you've learned the basic stuff and refine your understanding and practice. But here in America, which is kind of a strange thing, there are little outposts of this music cropping up in far-flung places, and we had the good fortune of having master Turkish teachers visit the United States periodically, and I can see we experience the effort to keep components of the meshk tradition alive. So, for example, when Timuçin Hoca visits us, and very often we're in this very space, Reverend Karen graciously allows us to occupy and enjoy this beautiful space for 4 or 5 days while we receive music instruction. But it's an all-day thing. I mean, yes, we have music lessons, but then we go downstairs and we share food, we share talk. The teacher remains accessible at all times. And you can build the sort of relationships and community with the teacher and the other practitioners of this culture that are not possible under other circumstances. So we're endeavoring to sustain and maybe recreate as many elements of the meshk experience as is possible under current conditions. And it's a labor of love. And having said that, there's a phrase in Turkish, aşk olmayınca meshk olmaz, which means without love, meshk is impossible. And this is very much a culture of love between the teacher and the students and the community and the people that are attuned to this music. It's very much an expression of deep love. That might be a good place to leave it.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to cut off the live stream now. Thank you. And I wonder, we're